right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another episode of Topics with Mr. Javadi. We have a wonderful guest today, Donald Osborn from Scottsbluff, Nebraska. I'm doing this show from Greeley, Colorado, their neighbor, and we are just so blessed and grateful to have him in our western region. I am personally proud of that. But anyway, Don, welcome to the program.
Well, thank you so much, and thank you for having me. This is going to be a lot of fun.
Well, this show will be about you because the last one you were gracious enough to help us with Randy Meisner.
Mhm.
We were talking about him and your acquaintance with him and basically the biographical information about Randy and the Eagles, etc. But today it's about your own musical career. So I wanted to start out with just that. Tell us a little bit about, your musical background, and it's an extensive one.
Well, yeah. Well, I've always wanted to do music. I knew that from an early age. I started in schools and choirs and musicals and all that sort of thing. I played French horn, I played electric bass, acoustic guitar, and sang, and was in all the choirs, all the normal school events that you might expect. And then after high school, I did my first year of university at the University of Nebraska in Lincoln, and I played bass for a group called the Scarlet and Cream Singers. So
Mm-hmm.
it was an alumni association group, and did a lot of that. Well, I discovered that at the University of Colorado, Denver, they had a recording program, and that just grabbed my attention. I wanted to make records, learn how to produce, how to write songs, do all of those things. And so I moved to Denver for my final 3 years of college. And that's where I got my first taste of recording and doing that sort of work. After school, then I started playing in local bands like most musicians do. Traveled a lot, did lots of low rate club dates, bar band club dates. Well, I soon realized, well, soon after a few years of doing that, realized that it was good practice. It was good to hone your skills. But if you wanted to do something bigger, you had to get out of the bars and go jump into the deep end. And for me, the deep end was Los Angeles. So I picked up everything I owned and moved to Los Angeles and started auditioning for bands and looking for opportunities and playing shows and things. And I did that for several years. When I was in Los Angeles, I hooked up with an old time music guy named Jan Berry, and you might
Yes.
recognize Jan from Jan and Dean. So they had hits in the '60s, huge hits. They were at one time as big as the Beach Boys, and they toured a lot with the Beach Boys. Jan did a lot of writing with Brian Wilson, who's one of my all-time music idols for sure. But I
Mm-hmm.
toured with Jan, and we played all the Beach Boys songs and Jan and Dean songs, of course, and that was very exciting. I loved that. Played in a number of original bands. Did all of the showcase places, Madame Wong's West and Music Machine and Club Lingerie. And back in the day, those were the places to go see new up and coming bands. I was with an act called Russ Coletti, and we did a video on VH1 that featured Morgan Fairchild, who at the time was a big TV star. And
Right, right.
so it was fascinating. We shot a music video, did some work with her makeup and hair people, and we did a photo shoot. It was fun to kind of get a glimpse of what the Hollywood image making machine looks like. And so we like most bands that are trying to make it in Los Angeles, we didn't get picked up. Well, after that, I moved to Vancouver, Canada, where I had some opportunities that I decided to begin chasing there. Vancouver is kind of um, Canada's answer to Los Angeles. A lot of
Right.
music, a lot of studios, a lot of film, TV production, that sort of thing. And I was in Vancouver when I got hired by a company called SOCAN. Now, SOCAN is a company that pays songwriters royalties, works with songwriters and publishers and things. And in when I was back in college, I did study music business as well as music recording, and so
Hmm.
it was a place to put that into play. I was a member relations rep for SOCAN. The American counterparts are ASCAP and BMI. So
Hmm.
basically, it was my job to meet with all the songwriters, all the publishers, explain to them how copyright works, how music works in general in the business. And through working at SOCAN, gosh, I got to meet all kinds of people, which was very exciting. I mean, some of the bigger names, of course, Brian Adams, Sarah McLachlan,
Hmm.
Randy Bachman from Bachman Turner Overdrive.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
A lot of different people. I was did a lot of conferences and did a lot of speaking. So got to present at South by Southwest once, talking about I think sub publishing. There's a lot of intricacies to music publishing, and I became very well versed at that. So that was my day job, doing the music business. And of course, the whole time I was always playing and singing and writing songs and doing things. At that time, I signed my first publishing deal with a publisher out of Los Angeles. So I was back and forth quite a bit, co-writing with people and doing, lots of business, between SOCAN and between my own pursuits.
Hmm.
And so then I honestly got a little burned out on that. I was when I was at SOCAN, I was in the clubs every night and met people, did things, and it was kind of a frantic, high stress lifestyle. And
Hmm.
I got a little worn out on that. So I took a step back and started doing business consulting. And the business consulting involved writing business plans, developing marketing strategies, doing those kinds of things. And I do enjoy business. Um, I've always had a foot in playing and writing music, so that never stopped. And and then some years later, I decided. By this time, I had a wife and we had twin daughters. Well, tragically, my wife passed away when my girls were 7 months old, and
Oh, wow. I'm sorry.
that started a whole new trajectory. And from then on, I became, doing everything else I was doing, and also a full-time single parent. And
Yeah.
it kind of got to the point where doing everything, looking after the kids, doing music stuff, doing business stuff, trying to keep it all together, it got to be a bit much. And that's when I decided to move back to Nebraska, where I live now. I've got family here, and it just made a lot of sense. And so from that point on, I was doing marketing, and I've had a marketing agency for quite some time. Well,
Right.
I had a turning point during COVID, and probably this happened to a lot of people. It was kind of a reality shot.
Hmm.
For me, I had twin daughters who were in seventh grade, and everything shut down, and they looked at me and said, "Are we going to be okay?" And that hit me like a ton of bricks. And I said, yes, yes, we are going to be okay. And here's how we're going to be okay. Well, that was
Hmm.
a turning point for me because I had done music for years, and but honestly, never 100% committed to it because
Hmm.
I had kids or I had, whatever was going on. Well, I decided that at that point, in that stage of my life, it's kind of now or never. I better get on it because you know, it's time's up. It's you reach a point where you just have to draw a line in the sand and say, this
Yeah.
is what I'm going to do. So I gathered up every song I'd ever written, and some of them were published. I didn't have any big hits. I had some film placements and some minor covers, but I gathered up
Hmm.
everything and thought, you know what, I've got a pretty decent catalog here. It's time I kick this into high gear. I kind of woodshedded. I got back into writing, into recording, started to upgrade my skills. I mean, back when I was doing recording way back when, we're using 2-inch tape. And of course, I had to move into the digital age, and I work on Logic Pro now and doing, everything's digital. And I had to really ramp up my skills. Well, I did that, and I gathered up a large body of work and started recorded it, put a band together, started playing shows. And all of this has led now to the book that I just wrote, um,
Hmm.
which hopefully we'll talk about in a minute. But the
Absolutely.
but the book is basically chronicles my process for how to go from, I'm kind of worn out, I'm a grown up, I haven't really achieved my dreams yet, going from that to let's get on this. Let's set the goal. Let's come up with the steps, and then let's get away to work on this every day. So I have done that. Now, to make a full circle, I have developed a business now where I can use my songwriting, my recording, my writing, my personal appearance, my talking skills, public speaking skills, and put all of that together. And what I've combined that into is a thing called keynote concerts. So keynote
Mm.
concerts is where you deliver a corporate keynote address, at a big conference, but it involves original music that I've written, and I've had that concept for a while, but I didn't really have the message dialed down yet. Uh,
Hmm.
with creating this book, which this is kind of my proof of concept um, on how to get things done, how to actually define your dreams and make them happen. So I started writing the book about 6 months ago, and I thought, well, I came up with this system for organizing and kind of making things happen. And I decided to test it out. And I tested it out with my first big goal of writing a book. And that book went live last Tuesday on Amazon.
Wow. Wow.
And so all this to say, I've come up with a way now for these keynote concerts. Now I have a message. Now I have something to teach people, as well as telling, my personal stories, my ups and downs, and also then a way to reinforce that message with original music that I've created. And so it's a very exciting time for me. My daughters just graduated from high school and are off to college this fall. And in many ways, I feel like I just graduated from high school myself. It's like this whole new adventure ahead of me, and I'm thrilled to be
Yeah.
pursuing this. And my thanks to you, because this is among the first places where I get to kind of tell this story, and hopefully bring some inspiration or motivation to people.
Well, I am so happy for your success. And not only that, it's really been an inspiration for me because you're a neighbor and, you're in our region. And, I have a unique pride about being a Western man.
Yeah, yeah,
I mean, I was born in Iran, but, which is very, very east.
sure.
But I've been raised basically in Colorado, and so I consider myself a home person here in the West, and love the Western United States, and
Mhm.
love stories such as yours. So it's just really a source of inspiration to me. I'm very jazzed about it. Let's use a music term on
There
there.
you go. Very good.
So
Very
yeah.
good.
By the way, my condolences about your wife. I didn't realize that.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
Thank you.
that was
Thank you.
yeah. I
You
know
know,
it's late, but nevertheless,
Well,
nevertheless.
and something I learned, I mean, putting some
Yeah.
of these personal tragedies into a story, into a book about myself, on one hand, I didn't want to make it all soppy. I didn't, people don't want to read a diary entry,
Mhm.
but what I realize is we all have things that happen in our lives. I'm not the
Mhm.
only one that's lost a loved one. Everybody has, or if they haven't,
Yeah,
they
yeah.
will. And what I find inspiring is when somebody experiences, they lose a loved one, or they get fired, or something goes sideways in their business. It's not what happens, it's what they do with what happens. It's how they respond. Do they get back up, brush themselves off, and stay focused on their big dream and keep charging forward, or do they quit? Do they wilt?
Yeah,
And
yeah,
so many
exactly.
so many people just fall apart, and they figure, well, that's it. I took my shot and it didn't work. And I've been guilty of that. I mean, like everybody, I've taken some hits in my life, and sometimes you just think, oh boy, I'm just gonna stay home and watch Netflix. Uh, and 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 I'm here to say when you don't, when you get back up, get refocused, stay in the fight, some pretty wonderful things can happen. And everybody's got their own version of the big dream. You know, I call my method that I've created. It's called the North Star method, and it all starts with with that $1 million question. It's kind of like the genie in a bottle. If you were granted three wishes, you know, what would wish number four be? Because, the first one's a lot of money, second one's, whatever it is. But what is your big dream out there that sometimes you don't even want to admit it to yourself because it feels so far off? Maybe it's writing a book, maybe it's starting a restaurant, maybe it's, whatever it may be.
Whatever it is, yeah.
Everyone's got their own version of a big dream.
Yeah.
But I want to encourage people to, you know, think bigger, like because we all have big dreams, and so many people just lower the ceiling on themselves and don't go after those bigger dreams.
Well, and we're going to talk about the book in just a little bit, I promise.
Oh, good. Thank you.
And yeah, good stuff. Good stuff. I'm also jazzed about that.
Thank you.
So you talked about it, DBO. That is your business, right?
Yes. Well, I've got
Uh,
DBO Digital Marketing and I've got DBO Productions. And
you want to talk about that a little bit, what it
you bet,
involves?
you
Yeah,
bet. Well, the
yeah.
productions is just a little boutique production studio. I produce other artists and I co-write and help people, get their ideas out of their head and onto a hard drive and somewhere where they can actually work on it and listen to it. And part of that involves a live sound as well. So I have a partner that I work with, and we install sound systems into, county fairs or churches, or, we do sound for concerts and things. And I've always loved doing that. I mean, it's fun to play with sound
Hmm.
equipment and, mic things up. There's a big festival that happens in Scotts Bluff every year. It's like quite a large festival called the Horizon Festival, and it's national kind of headlining artists, and
Right.
so I get to go there and help them on the crew and help set things up and miking up drums and just what have you. It's always it's fun to do that. The production studio side of things is just fascinating. It used to be you had to have a dedicated studio space, a 2-inch tape machine, a console. I mean, the costs for doing that were prohibitive. Nobody had a studio. I mean, studios were, they were their own thing, and artists would, hire the studio for $200, $300 an hour and to use all this great equipment. And now, if you've got a MacBook Pro and a little bit of software and some speakers and an interface, you've got a studio. Now,
Yeah.
the big difference is, I mean, kids can make records in their basement
Hmm.
using GarageBand. The big difference is knowing how to use the equipment, knowing how to write songs, and doing something more than just pushing a button to get some kind of rhythm and then, playing little things over it. I mean, there's such an art to songwriting and to music production. And that's something that I will hopefully never stop learning because there's, it goes on forever, all the variables. But it's
Well,
exciting.
yeah, go ahead. Go ahead.
Well, it's just, I mean, it's so exciting when you have an idea, an abstract idea, and then you start working on it, and you've got a keyboard part, you've got a guitar, you start adding things in, and then all of a sudden it turns into this thing. I mean, it's inspirational. I mean, it's just such
Yeah, it really is.
a
Yeah,
wonderful,
yeah,
wonderful feeling.
yeah. It really is. Music just is just amazing.
Hmm.
It really is. Now, plus, it seems to me gaining wisdom from those who've been through the experience, like yourself,
Yeah,
and having that mentorship, having that coaching. I'm of the mindset that you can't do everything by yourself. You gotta have some help. You gotta have some mentorship, and
yeah,
that is highly impressive that you're also doing that. and you've done that. You've helped other musicians. You talked about a group in Canada that
Yeah.
that you helped start, and of course, other projects. But that's just really amazing. So, talk to me a little bit about because a lot of this experience is from the north, from Canada.
Yes.
Talk to me a little bit about that. What was it like? What were some of the similar things with the U.S.? What were some of the
Mm.
differences?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, Canadians have a very strong identity as Canadians, and the music is, I mean, so many things are almost identical, but certain
Mm,
things are just very Canadian. And there's some unique talent that has come out of Canada that is just different than what you get. I mean, your music, your artistry develops in a large way based on where you grew up. So, growing up in Scotts Bluff, I mean, anymore, my material, draws on, there's a little bit of country, there's elements of Bruce Springsteen, there's
mm,
elements of just kind of Western culture. And I'm not a country guy. It's not country
mm.
music, but you've got those elements now in Canada. Um, certain parts of Canada, it snows all the time. It's freezing.
Yeah.
That so the culture in some of, especially way up north, the songwriters, they're inside all the time because nobody goes outside because it's 20 degrees below zero. And so they're inside. And people, people are writing songs. It's acoustic music. There's just kind of a whole culture around it. Now, Vancouver had when I was there, back in the day, had a really vibrant club scene. There was a lot of punk music going on. There were a lot of places to play. There was an act called the Odds that were one of my all-time favorites, and you could certainly look them up on Spotify. I think they go by Odds, Odds, and
Yeah.
they were, just wonderful songwriters, kind of quirky and very, I don't know, very Canadian. It's kind of a hard thing to articulate, but
Yeah.
Canadian in that same as, Rush, Bryan Adams, Tom Cochrane, Kim Mitchell, Bare Naked Ladies, Sarah McLachlan. These are some of the, I mean, they're big time acts and they're very, very Canadian. There's
Hmm.
there's just a difference. Now the business, um, Canada was kind of seen as a farm team to the United States major leagues. So the major labels in the United States they all had subsidiaries in Canada. But if you got signed to a Canadian record deal, that didn't mean you necessarily would get released in the States. So there's a lot of politics, a lot of money involved, and I discovered that the record label game is not for me. It kind of grinds on artists an awful lot. Anybody that's looked into this, I mean, there's a lot of horror stories. The record deals were terrible.
Did it? I'm sure. I probably know the answer on this, but I'm going to ask you: did it influence your music in any way?
Oh, I think it did. I think it
Yeah.
did.
Yeah.
Absolutely. There's in Vancouver, you've got the ocean and the mountains all right there, and it's a very international city, and that that influences, your environment influences what you write. I mean, it's funny.
Yeah.
I've done co-writes with people where, whatever happens to be going on in our lives it shows up in the songs, even if you don't really mean for it to. I mean, it's interesting. It's very interesting.
It's fascinating. It's
Yeah, yeah,
fascinating.
yeah.
Okay, so you corrected me on this some time ago on the motivational speaking part, but
Yes.
it sounds like you've done public speaking for a long time. It is, after all, a type of performance.
Oh,
Uh,
absolutely. Absolutely.
and I don't mean that in a negative way. I really mean that in a
Sure.
positive way.
No, I get it.
And but there's this keynote concerts that are going on, and if I'm understanding keynote concerts now, that's where you present something in a speech type form,
Yeah,
and then you have music combined with that. That's original music.
that's correct. That's
But why
correct.
don't you touch on that? Because you were saying it's kind of a new endeavor. So fill us in on that one.
Yes, well, it's for me it's a way to combine everything that I love to do.
Mhm.
And I've learned, I mean, when I take on a new venture, I always, I take courses, I buy books, I'm past the point of trying to make it up all by myself. You mentioned mentorship, and I look back on my life, and as probably we all do, I had opportunities where I could have gotten some help that I didn't. They say hire college students while they still know everything. I was a classic example of that. I got this figured out. I'll do it myself. And
I
you
think we all suffer from
I think
that.
so. I think so. And so with the keynote concert thing, I've studied a number of things and put a package together. I've been waiting to have the book finished before I launch this next stage. So keynote concerts, you promote yourself by talking to event planners, and they're the ones that put these packages together. And so the material in the book works as a workshop. It works as a day-long workshop or a 3-hour workshop, or just a 1 hour keynote concert. And you basically imagine you've got maybe 4 topics to cover in the space of an hour. So you tell a story, then there's kind of a lesson learned from the story, then you play a song that's related. That's 15
Right. Okay.
minutes. So you do that 4 times around. And so for conferences, they get to learn something. They get some little bit of inspiration. They hear some stories they can connect with, but there's some entertainment in there as well. They've got a term for it. They call it edutainment, education.
Yeah, okay. Yeah. Yeah. Right.
And
Right.
so it's not just a guy talking about sales. It's something a little more dynamic and a little more interesting. And the message that I'm delivering works. It's a pretty universal message, whether it's kids out right at, new young adults, people that just retired, and everything in between. It's about defining your dream and chasing it, and making your life expand in a good way. So
Hmm.
with the keynote concerts, I'm just ready now to start pitching, event planners. Now that I can actually show them a book, and there's a little bit of credibility built in there. One other thing I didn't mention that I want to use to launch all of this is I'm building this into a TEDx talk.
Okay.
And there's a number of processes to go through to get onto TEDx. But my next big goal, the last big goal was get the book out. My next big goal is to develop this and deliver a TEDx talk. And with the TEDx talk, in the world of speakers and influencers and authors, TEDx is one of the biggest promotional platforms on the planet. I mean, there
Mm-hmm.
are people, I mean, these are the high end guys, but there are videos on TED.com that are getting 1 million views. And that's the goal. So I want to get that in there. And then I figure that, and not only just having a TEDx talk, but the process that I'll go through to develop and create a TEDx talk, that's going to turn me in to the next version of who I need to be in order to achieve that goal. And so I think if I was just, if I got a letter saying, okay, do the TEDx tomorrow, I'm not ready to do it. I mean, you have to develop into it. You have to train yourself. You have to practice. You have to write all these things. So it's a way to develop myself where I can move on to that next level.
Well, what's fascinating to me is the excitement you have about all this. It just carries across. And I
Yeah.
think it has to impact. It has to impact the reader. It has to impact the audience, the fans, because there's a motivation there, and it's positive. Because it really is easy to be negative. Like
Mhm.
I've told my former students, when I was teaching, that I'm very talented at being negative. It's just so I have to overcome my negativity, and it takes
Yeah,
effort every day.
it does.
So what you're talking about really resonates with me and hits home because, and I think it does with a lot of people, the type of people I just mentioned.
Yeah.
Kids that are trying to, you know, get someplace in life. And I think that's really something that you also are rather passionate about. And
Indeed.
you know, it's a huge audience that's out there. So amazing, amazing stuff. Okay, so you've talked about the people you worked with, Brian Adams, of course, and
Mhm.
Sarah McLaughlin, and you know, the odds, you mentioned them. Any other names that pop up that for curious ears?
Um, oh gosh, when I was at SOCAN, I probably spent more time with music publishers and artist managers
Hmm.
on that side of things. And did the Sarah McLaughlin's management company was Network Management, and I was good friends with some of the principals there, and so I was around a lot of their acts and a lot of the things they were doing. Now it was Canada. A lot of people might not have heard of some of these folks,
Yeah.
but very vibrant. There's an artist manager named Bruce Allen, who, if you want some
Uh-huh.
entertainment, he managed um, Bachman Turner Overdrive, Loverboy,
Right, right. Yeah.
Mike Reno from Loverboy. I've spent some time with Mike, and you just when you're in that business, you end up you run into people all the time, and
Yeah.
sometimes you get to jam. I mean, it's I'd go to these jam sessions, and there'd be, and these are like recording acts that are well-known people. There's a heavy metal band that I get to play with, and then there's a country singer, and then there's just all these different things, and it's really quite a lot of fun. I would
Yeah.
to be a judge for a lot of music contests, and that was always interesting because you've got people who are just beginning and they're trying to figure it out, and you get the opportunity to kind of
Mm.
coach them along a little bit. Now it was nothing like the American Idols of what you see today, but certainly lots of lower level people that weren't in the public eye that I was able to.
Oh, that's fascinating. That's exciting.
Yeah, yeah,
That's remarkable because that's what makes the world go around. I mean,
yeah.
you know, just amazing, amazing stuff. Thank you for sharing all of that. It's fabulous. The so now we've come to the big moment, the book. Why
The book, the
why
big
don't you
moment.
hold up the book
Here
now?
we go. Here, let's see.
Oh wow,
Okay,
building, yeah,
let's see if I.
building your dreams, right?
Oh, there we
Yeah,
go.
yeah, that's better. That's better.
Building,
Building your
building your
dreams.
dreams. Don't spend
Oh,
your
Don Os.
life
Oh,
on
wow.
someone else's path.
What a
I've got
cover that is. Yeah.
Well, and I designed the
Yeah.
cover, and then I gave it to my daughter Ava, who's a
Mm.
way better graphic artist than I am, and she cleaned it up and tweaked it and resized it and made it look a whole lot nicer. I got to tell you a funny story. The very first copy that I saw, the day it was released, my parents ordered one, of course.
Yeah, yeah.
It's great. When I walked in, and they had just received it, and I looked, and at the very top it says, "Don't spend your life on someone else's path." The very first thing I looked at there was a typo. And of course, the beauty of the digital world with Amazon, it's like,
Hmm.
whoops, I missed that one. So I went in and fixed it, re-uploaded the cover, found, a couple minor little typos. And you can do that now. I mean, back in the day, they would print 200,000 books, and if you found a typo, tough luck. So
Hmm.
this is the book, though. So um, it's about 100 and what is it, 176 pages.
I think that's what you said. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
it's a pretty quick read, and
Yeah.
the first half is a memoir where it
Hmm.
tells the story, some of these things. I mean, it elaborates on some of these things that I've mentioned.
Right.
Growing up in Scottsbluff, playing in bands, doing all the things, and it demonstrates the ups and downs. I think the bigger picture here is I've always had a good idea of where I wanted to go, and I didn't always have an idea of how to get there, and I didn't always stay on the path. So what I teach in this book is there are three elements. You have to have a North Star, which is your big goal.
That's your goal, right?
That's
You
your
got to set a
goal.
goal.
And
Uh-huh.
it's not just like work related, but it's relationship, it's your big dream, it's
Hmm.
financial, it's health. Those are all important. I mean, you can sell 1 million books, but if you're going to have a heart attack any moment, what's the point? I mean,
What's the good? Yeah,
it
yeah,
also,
yeah,
so basically for all of these things, you
yeah.
have a big goal. What's the ideal you that you want to create? Then the next step is you've got to figure out what are the steps to get there. Now I've broken it down into projects and habits. So the
Mm-hmm.
projects, for example, one project, I'm going to write a book. Okay, the first project is research how to write a book. The
Mm-hmm.
project is create an outline. The next project is do the searching on titles and things. So I mean, there are all these sequences, but then, and here's what I think the most important part is, you need to build habits to get those things done every day. Now, I liken it to you're on a trail hiking up the mountain. The top is way up there. You're on the trail, but if you don't put one foot in front of the other foot and stay on the trail, you're never going to get there. If you go, oh,
Yeah.
there's a pretty meadow. Oh, look,
Mm-hmm.
there's social media that I can look at Facebook all day long. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
there are so many distractions, and so this method basically sets the goal, sets the path, and then every day you need to decide on two things that are going to move you towards that goal. Now, for me, like for health, for example, every day I work out, and every day I pay attention to what I'm eating. So those things become habits, but they're still, I mean, you still easy to forget stuff. You skip a day at the gym, you skip another day, it turns into 2 weeks. So this checklist that I look at every single day, it's like gym, yep, okay, got to go to the gym, whether I feel like it or not, whether I'm in the mood or not, you got to do it. Okay, so
Yeah. Yeah.
same with the goal. Now, one of my big goal items, work on the book. And
Mm-hmm.
and it took me 6 months, and it started out, I've never written a book before. It's kind of intimidating. So,
Mm-hmm.
but set a timer. It's like, okay, I work on a story for, even if it's for 10 minutes. I did that today. Then tomorrow I do the same thing. Tomorrow I do the same thing. And all of a sudden you find yourself building some momentum, and you forget that it's a task that you have to do. It's a task that you're just doing because it's become a habit. So yeah, I write. I'm a writer. I only wrote 15 minutes. That's okay. The next day, oh, look, 2 hours has gone by. And I mean, like, you start becoming engulfed in it, and it just becomes a part of who you are. And so now, 6, 7, 8 months later, I've got my next big goal that I'm starting
Mm-hmm.
to chip apart. And all of these is just little bite-sized pieces. You just chip away. It's like running a marathon. A marathon is a marathon. It takes forever, but
Yeah.
you have to keep putting that one foot in the other. Like, you just keep going. You keep going. It's one step at a time. And so
Yeah.
this is a way to measure what you're doing. It's a way to hold yourself accountable, and it's a way to not get too distracted. So I've worked a full day, and I'm thinking, oh, maybe I'll just sit on the couch and channel surf. But then wait a minute, there's my list. I still have to work out. I still have to sing, do my vocalies. I still have to do this other little thing. And it's like, okay, do it. And
Yeah. Yeah.
and I'm fond of saying, forget your feelings. This is not about feeling motivated. Motivation comes and goes. This is about, do it because you're committed to reaching that goal, that big dream. And the more you do that, the more of a habit it becomes. But there's lots of days I don't feel like doing the stupid checklist. and
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
you
No,
gotta
I
and you
understand.
got to do it anyway. And
Yeah.
and it's a self-imposed. Nobody else is making you do it. Here's the beauty too. It's not like the teacher is telling the student you have to do this and that and the other. The student has come up with, if I want to become that person I want to be, I got to do these 12 things every day.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that reminds me of a couple of teachers. One of them I worked with at a high school in Arizona, and he said, "My dream is to help you reach yours."
I
That was one,
love that.
and
Yeah.
that was that. So that's something that sticks with me. And then I
Yeah.
had this tremendous poetry professor, Jim Doyle. He had been through the Iowa Writers Workshop, and he had some books published. He was a good poet himself.
Yeah.
And of course, he loved teaching William Blake and things like that. And he said one time, he said, write the poem because it's a mistake for you to wait until the mood strikes you,
Yeah.
because the mood may never strike you.
That's right.
The mood may never come. So you got to write. And so I thought that was those two are items that I, keep
Yeah.
in the back of
Yeah.
my head
Yeah. Yeah.
because they were amazing, amazing, uh, amazing pieces of advice. But I love what you're doing. And let me ask you, were there any writers as you grew up? I'm sure there probably were that influenced you or inspired you to come up. Is it something that you had thought about before, or is it something that you were thinking about?
Well, honestly, no, this is kind of a new development in my life.
Uh,
When you say writers that you admire, what immediately comes to mind for me are songwriters. And I've got
mhm,
a long list of songwriters that, are huge influences. Don Henley, Bruce Springsteen, come to mind. And Eric Church is a wonderful writer. I mean, there's some great
mhm.
songwriters out there, Jackson Browne, Warren Zevon. Um, but when it comes to literary or, like book writers, there are some writers that I've discovered just recently. There's a fellow named Matthew Dick, who is he's not so much an author as a live storyteller. And
Okay.
they have
Yeah.
these story jams where somebody gets up and they tell a story, and then the next person, and they're judged, and there's big prizes. And well, he is just such a master at that. I read his book, and it was a book about how to tell stories. And
Hmm.
I've always enjoyed telling stories, but I've not always been terribly good at it because, it's like writing a song. You can have a bunch of words, but you need to understand the structure and the placement and the tone and the timing and all that stuff. So Matthew Dick is just a wonderful, wonderful writer about storytelling. That's the first one that comes to mind. Now I listen to, guys like Grant Cardone and Tony Robbins, those kinds of writers, and
Yeah. Yeah.
I draw a lot of inspiration from them. And I've got a bookshelf filled with with those kinds of books. Um, None of them, like, I don't try and emulate those kinds of writers, but the impact that their messages can have, that's what I try and go after.
That's wonderful. That's wonderful. So tell me a little bit about this, and I'll try to get us to the wrap up here pretty soon.
Okay.
But because I know you're a busy person, so I'm talking like there's no tomorrow, which is kind of wonderful in a way. But uh, well, not me. I'm just saying the show, the experience,
I got it.
because otherwise I'm bragging about myself. But no, tell me about this. So writing songs, that process, writing literature, that process.
Yeah.
What you experience both. So tell me about, because I know Pete Townsend writes memoirs and stuff like that.
Yes. Yes.
So what did you see in that? What struck you?
Sure. Well, I'll start with the writing part, like the book writing part.
Mm,
Uh, it started just trying to catalog stories of my life. It's like, oh yeah, I
mm,
remember that thing. So I'd actually write it down. I had never done that before. And so that's how it started. And I showed a few of these stories to some people, and they said, that'd make an interesting book. I mean, that's kind of where that seed was planted, probably a couple of years ago. But I got to a point where I would kind of have a general topic, and then I just start writing, just kind of stream of consciousness. And I found that once I could get out of my own way and just start letting it flow, that for me started to become kind of magical.
hmm.
And I had never experienced that before. I would imagine people that are proper writers that write lots of books and things, they probably that's how they operate, I would guess. It was a new experience for me. Now, that's a little bit different than with songwriting. Songwriting is almost a little more like writing a term paper because it's
Yeah.
very structured. I mean, the way I approach songs is I'll come up with a line or a musical hook or some kind of like a title, And then, let's say I want to write a song about, I see a beautiful tapestry behind you there. So let's say I want to write a song about a beautiful tapestry. I would then write out a long list of all the words I could think of to describe a beautiful tapestry. So now I've got this kind of catalog of words, and then I start looking for words that go together, setting up little couplets, little, things like that. And then I can, structure and put together a song. Now that all sounds very intellectual, and it is. But the other side of that, the really sort of raw creative part, is when I'm trying to come up with a groove or a hook for a song, I could just start playing piano and just
Mhm.
freeform, just start playing something, to start singing along. And it's like I've heard somebody say once, inspiration will hit you not when you're thinking about writing, it'll hit you when you're sitting at a piano playing and just getting into the flow of it. So music,
Yeah.
very much, you get into that flow of things. You come up with a start, you come up with a melody, you come up with a cool something. And I've got a little, a little mini recording device. So when, something neat comes up, I just, ooh, that's cool. I hit record and I play it again so I don't forget it, because it's very fleeting. And then,
Yes, yes,
so then I can
yes.
combine that kind of raw creativity stuff with the intellectual process of, mapping out words and things. And then,
Mhm.
and then that's where the songwriting craft comes in, because you want things to have a certain rhythm, a certain tone, a certain rhyme scheme. All of that stuff is where you sort of structure it all in. And so it's a fascinating process. And I love the process. And sometimes there's a lot of different ways to write music. Sometimes people will write up a full lyric and then add music to it. Sometimes the other way around. Sometimes, I mean, it's interesting too to write while you're recording the track. So you come up with, I mean, I've got a couple of songs where I'll just come up with a neat little repetitive guitar thing. I put that down, I add a little drum part, add a little bass part, and then I think, okay, where would that go next? And I just start layering things in and start, let's try this, let's try that. And that's a very creative process as well.
Mhm.
That's a lot of fun. And it's especially fun if you can collaborate with somebody who just kind of wants to play in the studio and you see what you can come up with.
Yeah, it's fascinating. Very fascinating. So the book people can get on Amazon.
Absolutely.
Uh, and you want to hold it up again, and I
You
think in the
bet.
middle it's
You
in
bet.
the, yeah, that shows good. No,
Uh,
a little bit this way, I
oh,
think
right
maybe.
there. Okay.
Yeah, yeah.
Building your
Building
dreams.
your dreams, Don Osborn. Okay,
Yeah, building your
Amazon.
dreams.
Yeah.
Don Osborn book. Now, there's not enough. If you just put in Don Osborn, it might not show up. So,
Okay.
building your dreams, Don Osborn book is probably the quickest way to get there.
And then Amazon is the main source that has it.
That's right, Amazon.com. And
Okay.
I'd also like to point out,
Yeah.
if you'd like to hear some of the music that I do, you can go to Spotify, look up Donnie O and the Troublemakers.
Okay.
And there's 4 or 5 songs, and soon there will be more. There's a bunch in the process of being mixed.
Well,
Yeah.
fantastic, fantastic.
Okay,
You're
and
an
finally, can I
yeah.
also plug my website address?
Sure,
If
sure.
if you have trouble finding those things, go to donosbornmusic.com. Yeah,
DonOsbornMusic.com.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
All right. And if people want to reach you, that's probably the best way is to just go to
Yes,
the
it is.
website. Okay.
Yes, it is.
All right. Well, Mr. Osborne, we thank you. This has been a privilege. It's just fabulous to be a part of this journey with you, and we're very thankful for your generosity and your time today.
My
And
pleasure.
just wish you the very best, and wish you the very best to your daughters in college, and
Thank you.
all of that good stuff. So fantastic, fantastic. A
Thank you.
plus.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah,
And I'll close with this. I'm
yeah,
not that far from Greeley, so let's meet up and
yeah.
have a cup of coffee sometime.
Hey, that sounds wonderful. Maybe
Yeah.
I understand there's a place owned by a German lady in Sydney.
Oh,
So maybe we can meet up there sometime.
that'd be
I always
perfect.
want I always wanted to check that place out, but I never did.
Okay,
So maybe we
let's do
could
that.
do.
Let's do
Yeah,
that.
okay.
All
Sounds
right.
good. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you so much. All the best.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye bye.